Okay, welcome everybody. My name is David Holliday. I'm the Vice President of the National Student Exchange. Today's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. It is still a pandemic. I want to say that just because, for posterity purposes, when I watch this a couple years from now, I'll remember, oh yeah, that was during the pandemic. Today's session is very exciting. The NSE's Diversity and Inclusion Committee came up with this great topic to talk about veterans and military connected students, both in general as a student population, but also as it pertains specifically to NSE. So we have a couple of great speakers today who's gonna talk to you about their experience and their insights on this topic. And then, as I said earlier, today's gonna be more of a conversation, I think. So hopefully you have questions and things that you can bring to the group. I'm going to turn it over first to Raina. Do you have anything that you'd like to say on behalf of the committee?
Yes, thank you, David. I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. It's great to see everyone, and especially thank you to Colin and Robert. We're really excited to learn from you all. And again, big thanks to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee who helped put this together. And I just want to apologize right now if I say something that doesn't make sense. It's because my internet is really unstable and it's cutting in and out. I'm actually on the lanai of Aulani, which is a Disney hotel. I'll give you guys, that's our view for the past few days. But anyways, that's it. I just want to thank everyone. Actually, David, I guess I should have clarified before we started. Were you going to ask the questions, or would you like me to?
I think we can bounce back and forth. If we probably have different questions.
Okay.
As things come up, feel free to jump in. And then same goes to the rest of you, the attendees. Feel free to unmute yourself and to ask a question, or we also have the chat active. And so feel free to post any comments or questions in the chat. And Colin and Robert, Raina and I can kind of manage the chat, or I will, and jump in with questions if anything comes up. Thanks a lot, Raina. You make us jealous of your view. I guess I'm going to introduce Colin. I'm going to invite you, I guess, to introduce yourself and kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, David. I am Colin Haynes. I am the director of the Veteran Resource Center at the Western Oregon University, nestled in the beautiful Pacific Northwest hamlet of Monmouth, Oregon. 10-year Army veteran.
Wonderful. And how about you, Robert?
Oh, I had to unmute. I'm Robert Cackler. I'm the Associate Registrar at Colorado Mesa University, nestled in wonderful Grand Junction, Colorado. We're now the fastest spreading coronavirus county in our state at the moment. So so there's that. We can add that to our list. But it's beautiful here. I've been with CMU for just started my 23rd year there. As Associate Registrar, I do oversee the Veteran Services Center, and I'm a 10-year Army veteran myself.
Very cool. So Colin or Robert, are you willing to kick us off with whatever you think is most relevant to this conversation? Or would you like us to pose questions to you at this point?
I'm fine either way. Questions are good. I mean, I know one of the biggest things, and I'm sure Colin can attest to this, the biggest thing with dealing with veterans is resources and making sure that your campus has the resources to support a veteran. A veteran service center is great. Veteran lounges are great. Tutorial services for veterans. Anything like that you can have. Paid programs if your school has one, or those are awesome. And the thing when I bring up tutoring centers, the reason we do tutorings for veterans is because most veterans are non-traditional and they don't want to go sit and listen to an 18-year-old tell them how to do something. They really want to talk to another veteran. So services are a very important thing on any campus.
Okay, awesome. Are either of you able to give us a bigger picture of what does the veteran population look like in general on college campuses? Robert, you mentioned they're non-traditional. So can you tell us more about what is the typical veteran student on our campuses look like? How many are there typically in higher ed right now? Let's start with there.
Well, in a typical non-pandemic year, we have about 400 veterans on campus.
Okay.
Our student population is about just over 10,000. We have about 400 veterans. That's in a non-pandemic year. And then you'd want to count all the students. We're close to 600 to 700 if you count the students that are dependents of veterans that are using benefits that are dependents of veterans. And now these are the only veterans that, those numbers are the veterans that we know of that are using benefits for educational benefits. There are far more veterans than that on a campus, but it's just not all of them are going to use veterans benefits, and not all of them are going to be involved actively as some of the other veterans are. The typical age range, you're going to get 24 and higher. For your veterans, for your non-trads. I mean, some were a little younger, but for the most part, you're looking at, 23, 24 or higher.
And a lot of times it can vary based on where your university is. We happen to be pretty close to a National Guard, well, they don't really have bases, but National Guard armories. So we do get a lot of guardsmen coming in, and they will present as a traditional college type student. They'll be 18, and yeah, interesting to echo kind of what Robert said, like we have this mental image of what a veteran looks like. But the reality is there's not actually a prototype. I mean, the kind of 24 plus is typical. The north end of that plus, I mean, last year I had a Vietnam vet, so they could go pretty high north, but again, a lot of times you'll have a 17, 18-year-old kid, young man or woman, not kid. I mean, I get too used to calling students kids. It's a really bad habit. But yeah, we'll have young men and women. And that's another important one too, that there are women, and there are people who leave the service as they, them, theirs. So they're not necessarily always this, 24 to 35-year-old man that we picture them. A lot, I found it's kind of, I want to say it's something close to like a 60-40 right now with my population as to whether or not they're in a domestic partnership, with or without kids. The 60 is the ones with that. But I want to say that's even different from last year. And when we're talking about NSE, there's a question more geared towards this later, so we'll get into it. But thinking about NSE for someone with a family is a much different prospect than thinking about NSE for an 18-year-old kid that can pick up and leave and not leave anything behind. But we'll get into that later with some of the more direct questions.
That sounds great.
I have a quick question. I don't know if this is,
No, go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My internet is so bad, so there's a lag. So I'm so sorry for interrupting if I say something that doesn't make sense. I don't know if this is a question for David or Deborah, but do we have an idea of how many NSE students are veterans?
I don't think we have a way. There's no way for us to know at NSE headquarters. We don't collect that information on the application. But I do personally know on my campus, I've had quite a few veterans participate in NSE throughout the years. I'd say 1 to 2 a year on average, because I interact closely with our Veteran Services Office to talk about funding and things like that. And so, but NSE wide, I'm not sure.
Thank you. I was just curious.
You bet. Colin and Robert, can you talk a little bit about your roles on your campus and what exactly you do to support veterans and military connected students?
Yeah, so I'll start off with this one. Interestingly enough, it tends to be different on different campuses. I know Robert said that veteran services on his campus is part of the registrar, and that's a pretty common model. The other pretty common model is my model, where we're part of the Division of Student Affairs. So we are within the student affairs sector. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of wish we had a system more like Robert's, because the divide between like the services I could provide and the services the registrar could provide, and the differences between academic and student affairs and FERPA and all that stuff, it gets a little bit sticky. But I am within the Department of Student Affairs. My main focus is making sure, basically, to make one wide overarching statement to make sure veterans have everything they need to be successful while they're in college. Overseeing the PAVE program, like Robert was talking about, has been imperative, because veterans like hearing from peers, not youngers, and not necessarily us. We're not authority figures, but some rock-headed people might see us that way. So it's good to have those peers out there. And also, very, very importantly, are like the people that work with me in the registrar side. I kind of just oversee them doing their certification works. But really what my department focuses on is a lot of external work as well, getting them connected with the VA, getting them connected with veteran service officers, with essentially holistically everything they need to kind of make it through. Because you think, like, just going back to like the baser education with the Maslow's hierarchy, like if their needs are not met, if they're hungry, if they're worried about finances, they're not worried about their academics. So just making sure that we are meeting all those needs for them and with them, so that when they show up to, well, I guess they're not really showing up here much anymore. They're showing up on their computer from their house. But when they show up to school, however that looks nowadays, that they are focused on school and not focused on what they need to do to process paperwork or seek VA healthcare. And there's a lot of minutia to the job, but the overarching theme is whatever you need, I got you.
Great. We have a question from the audience. Can you share what those needs are? What are, I'm sure, as we all know, college students are a very diverse group of folks, and veterans are just as diverse as well. But what specific needs might the veteran student population have compared to the rest of the population?
Yeah, so it's fairly rare that anybody makes it greater than 4 years through the Army without incurring some sort of damage, physical or mental. And usually when they get to us, they haven't really gone too far down the rabbit hole of getting those VA benefits initiated. So what we do is we work very closely with a veteran service officer to make sure that they have the VA healthcare they need, that they've submitted all the paperwork they need, that they have, and again, a lot of times what comes with that is, like, there's payments tied to a lot of these benefits, particularly the education benefits. There's, in most cases, there's a cost of living stipend that they get. So if they haven't figured out how to access that, how to get that, then we're talking about other issues like potentially housing insecurity, potentially food insecurity. So really meeting those needs until they could get those benefits processed, which in most cases we can get them processed before they hit the ground running here. But also a lot of times those, like, for example, if your classes start midway through a month, they won't get that until the end of the month after that month. Like if you start September 15th, they won't get their first VA payment till November 1st. So then you could start looking at like food insecurity, potentially not being able to make rent. And this could also be potentially coming off of a summer where they have the whole summer off. and they were not getting any pay that entire summer. So a lot of times what we could do is we could supplement this with like work study opportunities that give them a little extra spending cash so they could save up for those breaks from academics. Again, getting them connected with the food pantry, and getting them connected with like our Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs a lot of times can offer them extremely low interest loans over the short term so that they can kind of make ends meet until those benefit payments kind of kick in. And there's, I'm just naming kind of the more basic issues, but there's a lot of stuff comes up. Again, another need, for example, is, Robert already kind of hit on this, that these are primarily non-traditional students. So that could mean they have a child that's in need of childcare while they're either at work or at school. And basically, like, I know most parents out there, if it comes down to attending class or watching your child, they're going to watch their child. So if they're never able to get childcare and make it to class, like, they can't be successful at that point. So it's about meeting those needs. So when they arrive here, they're fully invested here.
Do you have anything
Yeah,
to add, Robert, about kind of your role working with veterans?
Well, everything that Colin said is exactly the day-to-day routine of my veterans coordinator. She deals with all of that. Of course, she and I have daily meetings, so I hear about this all the time. And in fact, she and I talked this morning. So I oversee her and our certifying official, because that all falls in the registrar's office. So my role also with veterans is we have a student veterans association on campus, and I'm the I'm more of the silent advisor, but I'm one of the co-advisors to that. Then I also oversee the PAVE program that we have on campus. And then I'm a direct link, so it's easier for me. I'm a direct link to to student services and to the academic affairs office. And so on our campus, we've arranged things. So in part being the registrar's office, we let our veteran students register a day earlier than most other students. We lump them all together with our merit students, because our merit students get to register a day before. So if you're a junior merit, veterans get to register with them. So that helps out with registration. And then anyone who, especially for our guardsmen or anyone who gets called back to active duty or has orders, that all goes through me as well in our office. And I work with all the other departments to get that all taken care of for them. So my role is not huge, but I'm involved in it on a daily basis because it's one of the 4 major areas that I oversee at the university.
Awesome, very good. We have a couple questions here in the chat. And I'm going to broaden the first question out, or both questions actually relate to this. Can you talk about funding? What specifically are you talking about when you talk about veterans funding? Colin mentioned cost of living. I think many of us know about educational benefits, relating to the GI Bill. Can you talk about the various types of funding that the veteran students and dependents of veterans qualify for? And then beyond that, we're going to hold the conversation about how it applies to NSE for the next question.
Okay, of course. Well, from my point, all veterans, and sometimes they don't realize, even if they're getting federal benefits, they're still entitled to federal financial aid as well. Oh. So that's one thing we try to make a point. It's like, no, you still need to apply for the FAFSA, because you can still get a Pell Grant, even though you're getting aid from the government, or you're getting your GI Bill, you can still get that. And then the other part just comes down to their basic housing allowance, and that's what Colin was talking about with their housing stipend that they get. And then, but that stipend is going to be based on their registration. And I think, now they only need to be registered in one seat, or one in-class class, or one hybrid class to get their full BAH, but then they still have to be a full-time student. Oh, and then there is VA work study. So when Colin was mentioning about work study, VA work study is a good opportunity if you can get a student in on VA work study, because then you can circumvent the federal work study and put him on VA work study.
And with so with like a veteran, that's going to be a pretty easy exchange because they get federal benefits. It's the same for me as it is for Robert. Like it gets processed the same way. It's the same funding stream. Now where you do have to be a little bit more knowledgeable is with, say, dependents or National Guard students potentially. You're not going to see a whole lot of National Guard students on NSE unless they could get like temporary duty orders to your guardian, which like I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole different pain in the butt. But like let's focus on dependents specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are going to be on federal Chapter 35. Not all of them, or a lot of them will be on federal, like just straight up transfer of GI Bill benefits, but which is good because you could just process them as they were a veteran. But say it's Chapter 35, so that covers X amount, and usually there will be state programs to come in and fund them the rest of the way. Like in Oregon, we have a dependent tuition waiver. In whatever state you live in, they may or may not have something. So I'd say just if you're an NSE rep and you're talking to a veteran or dependent from another state, getting ready to come to you, like be knowledgeable about your state programs before you talk to them, because the place where they're coming from, like, you don't know because you don't live there. You deal with where you are. So just, a lot of you will have, somebody like me, somebody like Robert on your campus who can just, in a quick email, tell you all that stuff off the top of their head. Or even better, just, when you're emailing them, just CC, your equivalent to me or Robert. And we'll fill them in with what they need from there, because those state benefits will be confusing to somebody from without.
Correct. Our students too, just on that, our veterans all get in-state tuition rate, as well as the dependents get in-state tuition rate.
Okay. So
but every school's different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we should have probably put a big caveat statement at the beginning, like every state has different policies and procedures. I think different institutions might have different policies and procedures. Is it the case also that some of these policies are open to interpretation by a particular representative on a campus? And this will lead to the question about NSE funding, which I think Robert and I have talked about before. Are some of these policies dependent on the interpretation of the person on the campus?
Well, my certifying official and Colin's certifying official, they should be doing the same thing. And if they're not, there could be issues with that.
Okay.
So the federal guideline is a federal guideline. So okay. Do some schools interpret it differently? Yeah, but then they get that caught in an audit. So.
Okay. Good. Okay. So we have two questions. One from Allie from Iowa State, and Judy Parrott works at Oklahoma State. She's the spouse of a 30-year Army veteran, retired in 2019, has a daughter who graduated from Oklahoma State last May, used her dad's GI Bill and yellow ribbon benefits. Can you discuss about any possible specifics with finances and NSE options? Is the GI Bill able to be used on the National Student Exchange or other veteran funds?
From what I understand from my, well, this would be for the veteran or for the dependent. So a Chapter 35 or 35T would be the dependents. If they exchange on Plan A, then yes, according to how the federal guidelines work.
Okay, so just a reminder, Plan A, also known as host payment.
Host payment.
Yep, so a student would go away on exchange and qualify for the in-state tuition through the other campus. And in that case, they should connect with the veterans office there in order to secure funding. Okay, Colin, do you have any Do you have anything to
Yeah,
add?
so when it comes to federal funding, the main thing that it's really going to come down to is that whatever course they or whatever school they go to, it needs to be courses that apply towards their program of study.
Yeah, I haven't got
And
into
what I
that
would
part yet, but
say,
yeah.
yeah, and what I would say is in this case, like you may need to get a couple of registrars together or a couple of academic advisors or however your university does it, because usually courses get articulated like after you take them, but you might need to do like a little like theoretical pre-articulation, like yes, this course at you know University of Hawaii is the equivalent to this course at Western Oregon University. So we will know that that course is on their degree tracks. So just doing that before the paperwork gets processed, because if it's not a part of their program of study or it doesn't look like it's going to pop up on their degree tracks, it like the VA might just say no. And usually that no, you don't find out about that no until a month later, and they've already not been getting paid for a month. So it's not a situation you want. So make sure you get that done beforehand.
Correct. That's a very important thing that he brought up, because that's one thing I was going to mention here later if it came up in a question, or I was just going to clarify. But it is really on the part of the parent school or the home school to make sure that every class that student takes at the host institution works in their degree track. And so those should be done prior to them going. I make all my NSE students, regardless, do that. Luckily for most of mine, I can approve all those courses, even the upper division ones, before they go. So they don't have to do a bunch of running around other departments. I can just take care of those things because I oversee all of transfer as well on our university. So anyone who wants to do that, I always make sure they do that ahead of time. Of course, things change. They get there, they don't like the class, or all the classes aren't available, or they can't register because they can't register early. And we have to change everything, but then, I work with them to do that. But the important thing is, especially with a veteran or dependent, is those courses, it's really the home institution's responsibility to make sure those courses fit in that degree track. So, and that's another issue that can make exchanging difficult.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question, David? It's Carrie from New Mexico State.
Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
Hey guys. First of all, thanks for your service. I'm an Army brat and a former Air Force wife, so I know that lifestyle. So a couple questions. So I know when they, so I work in study abroad. We recently tacked on NSE, and we work very closely with our military veterans program office, and we have a separate course form for them. So before the students are even like applying to their universities, they're not only getting their courses approved through their departments, but the military veterans program is doing their piece too on those courses. So I'm definitely familiar. We have a form too that we use. But I have a question, because I know the rules sort of changed, like what was it, like last July, on how you could use the funding from the GI Bill for things like exchanges, and because it was transfer credit, they could no longer pay for it, even though they were paying their in-state tuition. And I know it hit like really with study exchanges. But so my question is though, so for our NSE program at NMSU, we actually give the students, it's not transfer credit like with our study abroad programs, are actually awarded the grade from their NSE program. They're actually awarded the full, they get their letter grade. So it's not transfer credit like we see with our study abroad programs. So that's been a kind of something that's been rolling around in my mind, and I just haven't had a chance to sort of reach out to our military and veterans office, mostly because our programs are mostly not going anywhere right now. But what are you guys finding with situations like that? We're home, we're B plan, we're not A plan. So our students are paying their NMSU tuition, but when they come back, those grades are being transferred on their transcript. It looks as if they took those classes at NMSU and not someplace else. Is that sort of a weird loophole? Or is it just, it wouldn't matter anyways because we knew that they were taking the classes someplace else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. That's exactly how we do it at our school. Even for our international students, it's all interinstitutional credit. I merely put a placeholder on their account, and that placeholder holds their spot at CMU. And then
Right,
once I get
same.
their stuff back, their transcript back, then I put each course on there individually. And the GPA, everything matters, the grades, everything. It actually calculates in their institutional GPA. There's just a notation saying that they took it through an NSE or an international program.
Okay.
But for us being, since I don't, all I know is last I knew you can't send out on Plan B because the VA doesn't like that. Because on host payment host payment Plan A, I've been doing NSE a long time, so I have a hard time switching from the new terms. But with the host payment term, there has to be a parent guest letter that is done in order for the host school's certifying official to certify the VA benefits. So once that is, basically the letter is something along the lines is, we know that they're a CMU student, they're going to exchange to ABC school for a semester. You can certify them. So they certify so the students can receive their funds. But it's our part. We even have to say how those classes are going to transfer back. So it's our part to do that part. So, but that parent letter is what your certifying official needs in order to certify a student from another institution. And I know that works on Plan A. There was an issue with Plan A, Plan B that David and I had a discussion with, but I know the way the feds rewrote things, it's strictly, they have to be paying the other institution.
Yeah, we saw that. We had a student on a study abroad program go directly to a school in Ireland, and they were able to supply the parent letter. So it totally, the VA paid for his program in Ireland because he was a direct pay student. He wasn't paying our tuition.
Correct. They have to do the, like on our international exchanges, they have to do a direct exchange and not a, I forget what the other one is. It's
reciprocal. Like a reciprocal tuition exchange?
There's a direct and there's an exchange. It's just plain exchange, or there's direct. They have to do direct and not exchange.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know that they changed that rule sort of, was it like last summer when they would when they weren't going to take the exchanges anymore. And I mean, it's really unfortunate because I know in New Mexico State, our in-state tuition rate is very low. And we do have we're in the same, we're near Holloman Air Force Base, Fort Bliss. I mean, White Sands Missile Range, that's all right here where we're located. So that's all that lives here is military, so our veteran population is high because that's what lives in this area. Heck, I'm a product of that too, right? So yeah,
exactly.
It's really unfortunate. So it is what it is, and we'll work with it. Thanks you guys for this presentation. It's really interesting.
You bet. Colin, do you have anything to add about funding and I guess especially we have Greg Golden from also University of New Mexico. Both New Mexico campuses in NSE only participate under home pay Plan B. And so is there a way to allow for that to work, for VA funds to follow their students that go away on exchange?
I mean, just off the top of my head, like a really like ghetto way to do it that would kind of like work, I guess, would be the VA allows for co-enrollment. So I guess technically what you could do is have them enrolled in one course at your school that's like a 1-credit NSE course, and basically just like reporting back to you once a week, but it's institutional credit. So they're actually actively enrolled at both universities because co-enroll is good to go.
Yeah, that's the one, like that's a backdoor way to possibly do it, but I
wouldn't, but hey.
I wouldn't. I don't know how the auditors would like that, but
yeah, exactly.
So I guess what I'll say for everybody is connect with your Veteran Services Office. Is it the SRO that's the certify, or what is SRO?
SCO, SCO.
SCO. What does that stand for?
School Certifying Official.
Official, yeah.
So does every college or university have an SRO? Somebody dedicated to that role?
Well, if they participate with if they do veterans benefits, yes. If they don't, if there's some weird private school that doesn't do it, then no, they wouldn't have one.
Okay. Sounds great. And I did want to share, I meant to start with this. I had a really, I'd had other veterans I'd worked with before. But I was contacted about 2 weeks before a fall semester. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago by an NSE campus out on the East Coast. They had a student and the student's parent contact them. The student's brother was in the military and was in an accident or was injured and was at the VA hospital here in Minneapolis. And so the whole family wanted to come and be close to him while he was recovering in the hospital. And so they utilized NSE as a way for this student to come and enroll in classes at an affordable rate. We did it on host pay, Plan A. I remember receiving that certification letter from her home campus, which allowed for our Veteran Services Office to work with her and get funds dispersed. But, you know, it's one of the most unique ways that I've ever used NSE in a really meaningful way. It impacted the student and her whole family, essentially, for them to be close to her brother. And so yeah, some of these bits and pieces are coming back about the certification letter and things like that. I'm recalling. Let's see, is it possible to go to Canada and use VA benefits? Is there a problem with that? Yeah, and Kelly asks if any of our Canadian campuses allow for host payment. Yes, there are some that do. So does the fact if it doing an international exchange, whether it's study abroad or going to Canada through NSE, does that impact funding or processes or anything?
I've never tried Canada, but I know that we've had students go to Ireland and Scotland.
Okay. So, and
They're able to certify
like,
it, you can do it, like straight up.
Okay. And as long as the host campus is willing to, you know, if they're billing the student directly and the home institution certifies the credits, that sounds like those are the two key pieces to this.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how the foreign universities do it, because most of them aren't going to have a veteran certifying official, but somehow they get it done. So
okay.
And it would kind of depend, like in Vancouver, BC, like they probably got a SCO. You go to like Windsor, maybe not.
Maybe not. No.
So, yeah, it kind of depends.
Okay. Couple of questions that have come in. So I think this would be mostly with active duty and maybe guard students, but can students in general be confident they won't be called to active duty during their enrollment in college, or specifically if they're doing NSE?
No.
Okay.
No. If
So
the feds want you, they're going to get you.
That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. And then Judy asks, Robert, can you repeat the part about BHS or BHA, basic housing allowance?
BAH, basic housing allowance. So the basic housing allowance is what the veteran would get for their housing. And they have to be in one, they have to be registered full-time. And one of those classes has to be an in-seat class or a hybrid class. Okay. I did notice something that popped up earlier too about hybrid classes or in-seat classes. If those classes, for some reason with our current pandemic, get switched to online, so then the veterans in all online classes. With the COVID regulations that the VA came out with, as long as that class started out an in-seat or hybrid class, then the veteran is fine. Then it's no problem. So.
Yeah, I just went ahead and posted like the actual bill that summarizes this. It's the Secretary of the VA has been given authorization to pay out to a fully online program that was converted from a once on-campus program because it's outside of their control.
Correct.
Yes, because there are some institutions that are online only. Some exceptions have been made, or were there students that were forced to transfer to another institution to be in compliance, or?
I doubt it. It
Yeah,
never, I don't think it ever really came up because, like, you know, we're part of a university system, like at least the public's anyways. So typically within your state, which is what a student would likely have to transfer to if they still wanted to be an on-campus student. Like
Mhm.
If we're closed down, Oregon State's closed down, U of O's closed down, Portland State, because it's all under the governor. So it never really came up like that. I think basically like what I was kind of when I was monitoring the situation, what I saw was like this was readily apparent right when COVID started closing schools down essentially, and it was kind of awesome to see. It was basically like a foot race between the House, the Senate, and the executive branch as to who's going to get this sucker passed the fastest. Like they were racing to hook students up. So good.
The biggest,
Not too often you could say like great job government, but hey,
yeah.
in this case, great job government.
The biggest thing I saw, and it didn't just impact veterans, but there was a lot more withdrawals because there were a lot of students that didn't want to do online school. So the withdrawal rates were significantly higher.
Okay.
So
Judy asks, how can we reach more vets and or their dependents to study away with NSE? And I guess, can either of you talk about your perspective on NSE if it's, you know, how to advertise the NSE program, promote the benefits to vets, to encourage them to do it?
I just do my normal advertising. I don't specifically target veterans. I mean, I could, but I've not specifically targeted veterans. I have two of the students that have exchanged in the last couple of years have been dependents. And I didn't even realize that. I didn't market to them. They just so happened to come across, and then you know, the dad would call and say, can they use GI benefits? I'm like, oh, the student didn't even mention that when we were discussing things. So,
okay.
So, but no, I mean, I could market to them, but I just market normally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so on my campus, to market specifically towards veterans, like Emmanuel gives me y'all's propaganda, so I could push it out like to my mailing list. And I also got a shout out to him that he does a fantastic job of like right when students hit the door, like before they start school, like he's hitting them before they start, like getting the idea implanted in their head, like, hey, NSE is an option. And you don't necessarily hit all the vets that way because a lot of those pre-start of school things are mainly like, you know, kids coming out of high school like with their parents. So you don't always get the vets in there, but I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So, you know, he is going to get a handful of vets, and you know, for a young single gal that's coming right out of the service, you know, a lot of them signed up for their sense of adventure. So it's going to appeal to them. But then there's the other kind of vet that just kind of, you know, wants to put their head down and crank out a few years worth of coursework and get out of there real quick. So
Correct.
Don't be offended if they're not about that life. Some of them will and some of them won't.
Correct.
Yeah, I know a few of the veterans I've sent away on exchange. You're exactly right. It's the sense of adventure. Going, you know, many of them have traveled already with the military, and so the idea of traveling with NSE is appealing, domestically or internationally. I've also had I don't remember if she was a dependent that was receiving GI benefits, but I had a student who went to Guam. Her brother was stationed at the military base in Guam. This was a couple years ago. And so, you know, I didn't advertise anything specific to her, but she found NSE and she realized, hey, my brother's in Guam. NSE has a campus in Guam, and made it work and went and spent a semester with her brother on Guam.
I had a student do that she went to Alaska for the same purpose. She spent because her brother was stationed in Alaska.
Yeah, very cool. And same thing, all these stories are coming back to me. This was many years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. I had the spouse of a active military person who was transferred to a base in North Carolina, I think. And she actually followed and studied at an NSE campus there before, you know, ultimately she transferred to get her degree there, but another unique use of NSE. Another question here. Do either of you work with any of your ROTC units at your schools? Or I would open this up to other coordinators that are here as well. How can we connect to ROTC?
We don't have ROTC.
Okay.
With ROTC and NSE, I would almost say that's going to be a little bit of almost like a hands-off type deal, because they are under contract. They're basically in a unit at that point. They need to stay in that unit. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is at our school, actually, most of them aren't contracted to active duty. They're contracted to the National Guard. So they can't go anywhere. So I hate to say it, but our ROTC is not your audience, unfortunately.
From what I know of ROTC, yes, exactly.
Ariel, who's there from Eastern Oregon, says a cool non-NSE option for ROTC students run by DoD, the ROTCprojectgo.org is in the chat there. So anyone that wants to, his connections with ROTC students, sounds like a cool thing. Emmanuel actually says,
hey, this is Reina.
Yes, Reina, go ahead. Reina,
Hello?
are you there?
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. My lag here is so bad. I just wanted to add one thing about the ROTC. So I don't know if it's like campus specific, because when I worked with our ROTC program, they were totally fine with both outgoing and incoming students, as long as their campus that they were from or were going would also accept that exchange. So yeah, I don't know if it's campus or unit specific.
And there is also like a very big difference between a freshman and sophomore in ROTC and a junior and senior, because they signed their contract their junior year, and in which case it might make it a little bit more difficult. But technically, their freshman and sophomore year, they can actually drop out at any point without penalty. So it's kind of cool.
Okay.
We have a
I
couple.
see. Thank you.
We have a couple follow-ups on ROTC. Judy from Oklahoma State says they had an Air Force ROTC student who studied abroad through their department. They had to work around their time frames. They also had a reservist go abroad for 1 year to Japan. And then Carrie says we couldn't even get ROTC students out on intensive language programs for the summer. The requirements are so strict. So yeah, could be some opportunities there, but sounds like for the most part, it can be a challenge. And then Emmanuel suggested that, and this is something NSE headquarters could do, is we've been doing a cool video campaign. If anyone's following us on YouTube, they're called study breaks, and they're NSE alumni that are interviewing either staff or faculty on different campuses about their campus or their program or experience, but also other alums that we could see, reach out to previous NSE alumni and ask if there are any veterans that'd be willing to be part of one of these study break videos. That'd be helpful for our marketing purposes. Thanks, Emmanuel. We'll work on that. So we're getting short on time. Reina, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask? And also any other NSE coordinators, please jump in here if you have questions or comments about anything.
Sure. I just like to ask one other thing. I know it was kind of touched upon throughout the various topics, but is there anything that NSE coordinators can do to support their incoming veterans and military connected students?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, they are students, so they do need the same sort of academic and holistic supports that all students get. The other thing is, make sure a lot of times, like say you have a military student that's maybe only been back in school for one term, like it's their second term and they're out on exchange. They're not as academically minded, in the sense that not that they're like any smarter or dumber, just that they've been out of school for so long. Like if you're returning from, like, if you're coming straight out of high school, like you're still in like school mindset. They've been out of it for a while and they may not be fully back into it. So I don't know about if all of you like NSE coordinators have like a FERPA agreement where you could check in on them and like see their grades and all that stuff. But if you don't and can't kind of monitor them academically, get an advisor or somebody who can check in on them, just to make sure that they're staying up to snuff. And I would say also like just front load information for them. It could even be just an informational email or a pamphlet for right when they hit campus. Like, let them know, like, are there, like, what are your local work study opportunities? I know I personally wouldn't do a work study if I were on an NSE like outing, but some of them might be like, hey, I'm gonna need a little bit extra pocket cash to really enjoy this place. Let them know where a local veteran service officer might be, local VA healthcare facilities. Because a lot of these folks, like, especially if they're in their first or second year, they may not be done with getting all their benefits processed. So they may need one-on-one work with a veteran service officer. So there's going to be one, maximum an hour from wherever your campus is located, probably much closer. So let them know that. Get them connected with the Veteran Resource Center, obviously, because we'll have all kinds of stuff for them. And don't force them, but recommend a club. Like we're members of Student Veterans of America, and they're vets that live in the local area. They know the local haunts. And it's going to be like, it's like a ready-made chum. Like you're going to know like you got something in common. So it's a friendship in the making. And give them opportunities, give them meaningful opportunities. Take a look at where they're coming from. Like me personally, if I was getting in a student from Nebraska, I might consider like a trip out to the coast because they might have not seen a coast in a long time. If they're coming from UC Santa Cruz, the Oregon coast probably isn't that impressive. So I might take them up to the mountains or something. Just stuff along that kind of lines, I would say. Give them a meaningful experience, and definitely for veterans, I think this could just be a best practice for NSE in general. But you got a lot of vets with dependents, so maybe like a database of schools that have family housing readily available for them would be a good thing, because a lot of folks moved around a lot when they were in the military and they're over it. They want to stabilize, but a lot of folks really enjoyed that lifestyle. So taking their family to go experience like a different culture like that could be fun for them. So yeah, just having that information front loaded, like, hey, Hawaii could do it for you, but UC Santa Cruz doesn't have, family housing. But yeah, I was on a soapbox for a long time, so I'm cutting myself off.
Thank you for sharing.
Wonderful. I really appreciate both of your time and knowledge today. Thanks so much, Robert and Colin, Raina, and thanks to you and your committee for organizing this. It's a really important topic. I think some of my most recent emails to the NSE coordinator groups have focused on target marketing. And this is just another group that we can come up with targeted messaging to. I think it's about relationship building. I'd encourage all NSE coordinators to build that relationship with your SRO, with your Veteran Services Office, so they know who you are. They know what the program is and what opportunities there are through NSE. And then, of course, the careful communication. That really seems to be the key here. Careful communication between coordinators and the Veteran Services offices and the students to make sure that the proper payment plans are pursued, as well as getting academics approved and all of that in order to secure the funding. And Colin, thanks so much about making sure all the information is available to students. And that's something that I encourage all coordinators to do as well. We don't right now, and we can talk about this perhaps, we don't have a checkbox on our NSE application asking for veteran or veteran dependent students. So maybe just assume that any of your incoming students could be one of these and make the information available to them, to all of your students. I have an orientation packet that includes information. I don't know if I have information for veterans in my orientation packet. I will look at that. But for, multicultural student resources and GLBT students resources and all of this, make it all available to your incoming students, because you don't know who it's going to necessarily apply to.
Right.
So again, thanks a lot for your time. I think I'm going to stop the recording here. And if anyone wants to hang out and chat, we certainly can do that. But otherwise, feel free to get on with the rest of your days. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank all of you for working to
Right.
provide meaningful experiences to students.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Colin and Robert. It's so awesome to hear from you.
Yeah, of
And thank you,
course.
David, for
Yeah, you're welcome.
helping to organize.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your staycation, Raina.
Thank you. My kids were actually banging on the glass door because they wanted to go down to the pool now.
Well, you better get them there.
Will do. Take care, everyone.
Raina, I have a pretty good view too.
Let's see it, Robert.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can see it. I have to go outside. Let's see. I don't know how bright it is. See, here's
Whoa,
Wow.
that's just
Very
outside.
nice.
Yeah, outside the dining room. So,
dang. That's a straight up
Wow.
homestead. Wow,
so
nice.
yeah,
Not bad.
that's the world's largest flat top mountain, by the way.
Really? Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well,
Okay.
take care, everyone. Have a good
All
rest
right,
of your
y'all
day.
have a good day.
All righty. Thanks.
Bye.